No one handled Millionaire's autistic twins until Black Maid's daughter did impossible. Have you ever stood in the middle of a nightmare and realized you might be the only one who can stop it? What if you were 17 and the only person in a mansion full of adults who couldn't breathe, couldn't think, because two children were screaming like the world was ending, and maybe, just maybe, it was? What if they were autistic twins no one could touch, no one could calm? And what if their father was the richest man in the city, and he was yelling at you to do something, and your mom was crying in the corner because she thought she'd failed? What if they both stopped breathing? It was 2:17 in the morning. Lightning flashed against the massive arched windows of the Holbrook estate. The rain had turned the front drive into a black, churning river. The wind howled like a warning, slamming branches against the glass. And inside that house, all hell had broken loose. Elijah was banging his head against the stone floor, eyes wild, blood on his forehead. Eden was curled up near the fireplace, sobbing in that high, keening sound that no one in the house knew how to handle. Mr. Holbrook stood over them, shouting orders no one could hear over the chaos, his voice breaking with something that might have been fear. His suit jacket was soaked from the storm. His cufflinks glinted like sharp little eyes. I knelt between the twins, heart pounding so loud I could hardly hear myself speak. My hands hovered in the air, not touching them, just waiting. For something. For permission. For a sign. I wasn't even supposed to be there. I was just the maid's daughter. But Elijah looked at me through the mess of tears and snot and blood, and he whispered something. I still don't know what it was. But I heard it. And then everything went quiet. Why did they only listen to me? The beginning was quieter. Hotter, too. August in Atlanta doesn't apologize. It doesn't care what your plans are. The air is heavy and wet, like you're walking through someone's mouth. And that particular morning, I was supposed to be painting in the tiny corner of the garage I'd carved out for myself. Old canvases stacked against lawnmowers and hedge trimmers, my safe space. Instead, I was riding in the front seat of my mom's rattling Camry, stuck in traffic behind some fancy SUV with tinted windows. Her hair was pulled back tight, like always, and she wore her white people rich house voice, even though we weren't there yet. You'll stay in the laundry room, she said without looking at me. Don't wander. Don't talk to anyone unless they talk to you first. This is not the kind of job you mess up. Got it? They pay me more than I've ever made in my life, all right? You mess this up and we don't eat. I didn't say anything. She reached over and grabbed my hand. Her grip was firm, like she needed to feel something real. I squeezed back. The Holbrook estate was on the edge of Buckhead, nestled behind tall iron gates and hedges cut, so clean it looked like someone used a ruler. The mansion itself was ridiculous. 5 stories of old stone, ivy climbing up the sides, windows tall enough to drive a truck through. There was a fountain out front that probably cost more than our house. I'd only been inside once before, just to drop something off. That day, I'd seen one of the twins. Elijah, I think. He was sitting under the piano, humming to himself and hitting his hands against the floor in a rhythm that somehow made sense. I said hi. He didn't look at me, didn't move, but he didn't seem afraid, either. Don't, Mom whispered, tugging me away. That first day, she left me folding towels in the basement and went off to do her rounds. She was the head maid now, which meant organizing other people's schedules, keeping Mr. Holbrook from losing his mind, and making sure the twins' routine stayed exactly the same. I was in the middle of sorting towels when a woman in a pink silk robe walked into the laundry room like she owned it. Because she did. Who are you? I stood, brushing lint from my jeans. I'm Ava, Carmen's daughter. Carmen. Her eyes narrowed like the name was a math problem she didn't quite believe. You're too old to be tagging along. I nodded. Just helping out. She didn't answer. She just stood there, looking me up and down like I was some piece of furniture she hadn't approved. Then she left. Mrs. Holbrook wasn't mean, exactly. Just tired in a way that no sleep could fix. And cold, like she'd forgotten how to feel warm things. You could tell she used to be beautiful, still was, but her face looked like it didn't trust itself to smile. That night, I heard the first scream. Not mine. Theirs. It started around 9:20 p.m., from somewhere on the 3rd floor. A sound like glass shattering and someone gasping at the same time. Then another scream, higher this time, as if the walls themselves were in pain. I ran upstairs before I could stop myself. The hallway was lined with expensive art and smelled like lavender and money. 2 nannies were outside a closed door, panicked. One of them was crying. A third woman, someone in scrubs, had her back to the door, clutching a clipboard like a weapon. "I can't," the crying nanny whispered. "He bit me last time. He drew blood." "What's going on?" I asked. They all turned to look at me like I was the one screaming. The woman in scrubs shook her head. "They're overstimulated. Again. Something's off with the lights, and no one fixed the AC in time." "Where's their mom?" I asked. "She's out. Again. And their dad?" "Won't go near them when it's like this." The crying started again. Loud. Raw. And then a thud, like someone hit the floor. "I can go in," I said. All 3 women stared at me. "You don't know what they'll do," one said. I shrugged. "Neither do they." They didn't stop me. The room was chaos. Toys scattered, pillows shredded, one lamp knocked over. Elijah was rolling back and forth, his hands flapping near his ears. Eden had pressed herself into the corner, her face streaked with tears and something green the first didn't want to think about. I didn't move, didn't speak. I just sat down in the middle of the room. And waited. It took 23 minutes before they came close. First Elijah, then Eden. They didn't touch me, but they sat near, breathing harder, quieter. They didn't cry again that night. When I left the room, the hallway was empty. Everyone had gone. But the next day, Mrs. Holbrook asked to speak with me. And that's when everything really started. Because what no one knew, not my mom, not even me, was that Elijah and Eden weren't just autistic. They were hiding something else. And I was the first one they'd ever told. Mrs. Holbrook didn't offer me a seat. She stood in front of the grand piano in the formal sitting room, fingers tracing the curve of the lid like she was trying to remember a song she used to know. The windows behind her poured late-morning sunlight into the room, bouncing off the marble floors and throwing hard, cold light across her face. She didn't smile when I walked in. "You went into their room," she said flatly. I nodded. "Yes, Who gave you permission?" "No one." She inhaled sharply through her nose. "And yet you went." They were screaming. Her jaw tensed, but she didn't argue. Instead, she turned slightly, reaching for something on the piano bench. A tablet. She tapped the screen and handed it to me. I stared at it. It was a video. Security footage from the nursery hallway. Silent. Grainy. It showed me pushing the door open. The 3 women looking scared. Then, me sitting in the middle of the room like some kind of idiot. The timestamp read 9:27 p.m. "Did you touch them?" she asked. "No, but they came near you." "Yes." She stared at me, long hard. Then she said, "Come with me." We didn't go upstairs. We went out the back, through the pool area, down a path hidden behind the pool house. The air was thick and buzzing with cicadas. My shoes crunched over the gravel path. At the end, we reached a small cottage I hadn't known was on the property. White wood, a single door, windows too high to look into from the outside. Mrs. Holbrook took a key from her pocket, unlocked the door, and pushed it open. I hesitated. "Inside," she said. The inside was spotless. Minimal. A single room with pale blue walls, a twin bed, a small desk, a reading chair in the corner, a kitchenette, and a bathroom door slightly ajar. It looked like a guest house, but no one had been staying in it. Yet, "I want you here," she said. I blinked. "What?" "Move in. Live here." I stared at her, heart stuttering. "I don't understand." "You don't have to. All I care about is that for the first time in weeks, they slept. But I'm not trained. I'm not even." "You're not staff," she said. "You're not a therapist. You're not on payroll. That's why it works." I said nothing. "I'll pay you more than your mother gets paid. In cash, if it makes things easier." "Mrs. Holbrook, I'm still in high school." "You'll have time for school. Tutors. Internet. Whatever you need. Just stay on the property. Be available. We'll work around you. Whatever you did last night, you'll do again." I hesitated. "Can I talk to my mom?" Her face finally softened. Just a little. "Of course." Mom cried. Not the way I expected. Not in the "you can't do this" kind of way. She cried like someone who'd been holding her breath for years and was finally allowed to exhale. Her hands shook as she pressed them to her face. She didn't say no. She didn't even say wait. She's scared of them. I said, quiet. She's not the only one, Mom whispered. And suddenly I realized just how deep it went. The first night in the cottage, I couldn't sleep. Not because it was creepy. It wasn't. But because I could feel something, like I was being watched. Not in a horror movie way. More like, evaluated. Judged. I kept the lamp on. I kept the window cracked. And I waited. At 3:12 a.m., there was a knock. Not loud. Not frantic. Just there. I opened the door and found Eden standing barefoot on the porch, one of her hands clutched to her chest, the other trailing behind her like she forgot it was attached. Her lips were moving, but no sound came out. Elijah? I asked. She shook her head. Do you want to come in? She looked around, eyes wide, then stepped past me and sat cross-legged on the floor like it was the most natural thing in the world. I sat down too, close but not touching. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small object, looked like a broken keychain. A piece of plastic with something sharp sticking out. She held it up to the light, studying it like it was a relic from another world. Do you like stories? I asked. No answer. Okay, I'll tell you one anyway. And I did. I told her about the time my mom tried to bake a birthday cake without realizing the oven was broken and the whole kitchen filled with smoke. I told her about how we used to dance to old Motown records on Sundays, just the two of us in socks on the tile floor. I told her about painting in the garage. I didn't realize when she started falling asleep. Didn't realize when Elijah appeared outside the window, just watching. Didn't realize until morning that they'd both returned to their rooms without anyone seeing. Or that the keychain piece wasn't a toy. It was a piece of something much bigger. And sharper. With blood on the edge. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Because something told me, deep in my chest, that if I said the wrong thing, everything would fall apart. And I was starting to think that Elijah and Eden weren't just broken. They were afraid. And someone in that house had made them that way. The next afternoon, Mr. Holbrook came to the cottage. He didn't knock. He just opened the door like he owned the air inside. I want to know what you did, he said. I sat with them. He snorted. Don't play games with me. I'm not. You're 17. You're a child. I'm the one they came to. He flinched at that, like I'd slapped him. Then he stepped forward and lowered his voice. You're going to do exactly what my wife says. No more. No less. You speak to them when you're told. You never go in that room alone. Understand? I said nothing. He stepped closer. You don't know what's wrong with them. You don't want to. And then he left. I stood there for a long time, trying to breathe. And that night, Elijah left something under my door. A picture, drawn in crayon. 2 kids in a closet. A man standing outside it, holding a belt. And beneath it, in shaky letters, he said, "Don't tell. But Eden cries at night." There was something in that house no one talked about. And now, I had to decide. Was I willing to uncover it? Even if it meant becoming the one person everyone wanted to silence. Even if it meant I might be the next to scream? I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the little blue reading chair by the window, the picture Elijah had drawn on my lap, staring at the crooked letters until my eyes burned. I kept thinking, he trusted me enough to tell. And that scared me more than anything, because it meant nobody else had listened. By sunrise, I knew I had 2 choices. Say something and risk being kicked out, or worse, or say nothing and leave Elijah and Eden in whatever nightmare they were quietly surviving. I folded the picture up and tucked it into the back of my sketchbook. For now, I said nothing. Breakfast at the Holbrook house was like a church service. Quiet, formal, and stiff with unspoken rules. I sat at the edge of the kitchen with the other staff, picking at eggs I didn't want, listening to the clink of forks in the next room. Every so often, I heard a soft word from Mrs. Holbrook or the rustle of a napkin. Mr. Holbrook didn't speak at all. The twins weren't there. I caught one of the nannies, Amara, muttering under her breath as she tossed a half-eaten slice of toast into the trash. 3rd morning in a row they've locked themselves in again. I stood. Where are they? 3rd floor. Playroom. Doors locked from inside. Been in there since maybe 3 a.m. I checked the clock. It was 8:41. 5 hours. Did anyone try? Knocking? Begging? Bribing? She raised an eyebrow. Yeah, all of that. They won't let us in. And no one's calling the therapist again. Not after last time. What happened last time? But Amara just shook her head and walked out. By 9 a.m., I was standing in front of the playroom door. I knocked softly. It's Ava. Nothing. I tried again. Elijah? Eden? I just want to check on you. Still nothing. Then something slid under the door. Fast. Deliberate. Another drawing. This one was rougher, almost frantic. A red figure. Tall. Holding something in one hand. And two smaller figures curled up on the floor beside him. Lines all around the paper, jagged and sharp, like lightning or screams. No words this time. But I knew what it meant. They were scared. And they didn't feel safe enough to open the door. I sat with my back to it and spoke softly. I told them about the time I tried to fix our sink with duct tape and accidentally flooded the kitchen. About how my mom swore for 20 straight minutes while I used to mop like a dance partner. I told them about the stars I painted on my ceiling when I was 9 and how they are still there, glowing faintly at night. Eventually, I heard Eden hum. Then a soft click. The door opened. They were both barefoot, hair tangled, faces tired. Elijah clutched a stuffed dinosaur like it was oxygen. Eden held a blanket to her chest. It looked like it hadn't been washed in weeks. I stepped inside, slow. Hey, I said. Eden nodded. Elijah didn't move. Want me to sit? They both nodded. I sat today. No one spoke for a long time. Then Elijah whispered. He came again. I didn't ask who. I didn't have to. That afternoon, I told my mom everything. Not the drawing. Not the belt. But enough. She was wiping down counters in the kitchen, the way she always did when she was trying not to cry. Don't get involved, she said, voice low and flat. I am involved. You don't understand how these people work. You think truth matters, but in this house, money matters more. I'm not going to ignore it. She stopped. Face me. You want to save them. I get it, but you can't protect kids like that unless you're ready to lose everything. Then maybe I will. Her eyes filled. And what if I lose you? I didn't have an answer for that. So I walked out. That night, the storm rolled in. Thunder cracked over the hills like the sky was splitting in half. The power flickered once, then came back. I stayed in the cottage, sketching quietly, thinking about the red figure Elijah had drawn. His height, his hands, the thing he was holding. It wasn't a belt. It was a remote. The kind that went to a TV or stereo. Or a shock collar. I stopped drawing. I looked at the folded paper he'd given me earlier, unfolded it again, and I noticed something I hadn't before. In the corner, almost hidden in the lines, were 3 letters, RVT. I didn't know what they meant. Not yet, but I was about to find out. It started with a voice. 1:04 a.m. I was half asleep when I heard it, whispers outside the cottage. Not arguing. More like instructions. Firm. Clipped. I crept to the window, pulled the curtain aside just enough to see. 2 figures. One tall, wearing dark clothes. The other, Eden. She was being led away. Not yelling. Not fighting. Just following. Like she was used to it. I grabbed my phone and keys and slipped out the back door, heart in my throat. They were heading toward the east wing of the house. A part I'd never been in. Lights were off, but the back door was cracked. I waited until they disappeared inside, then followed, silent as I could manage. The hallway was cold. Stone floors. Dim lights that flickered like old candles. I crept closer. Voices again. Won't remember in the morning. Just keep her quiet. I need consent forms. She doesn't need to sign. You saw the clause in the guardianship. My blood ran cold. A door clicked shut. I ran. Back through the hall, out the side door, through the garden, down to the cottage. I didn't sleep. Just waited. Waited until I heard another knock at my door. 3:29 a.m. Elijah, covered in sweat, hands shaking, eyes wide. She won't wake up, he whispered. I grabbed my shoes and ran. Eden was on the playroom couch, breathing, but limp. Her pupils were pinpricks. Her lips slightly blue. There was a needle mark on her arm. I grabbed a damp towel and wiped her face, trying not to scream. Elijah rocked on the floor, hands over his ears. Who did this? I asked. He didn't answer, but his hand reached out slowly and pointed toward the vent on the far wall. Tape inside it, barely visible, was a small plastic box. I pulled it free. Inside, another remote. Only this one had a label. RVT Behavioral Mod. Unit 03. And a dial. And a red light that was still blinking. I stared at it for a long time. Then I looked at Eden. And I realized this wasn't just abuse. It was control. And someone had gone to great lengths to keep these kids silent. But not anymore. Because they'd told me. And I wasn't going to stop. Even if it meant taking the whole house down with me. I sat on the floor beside Eden for hours, waiting for her to wake up. She didn't. Her breathing stayed shallow, thin as paper. I kept checking her pulse, even though I didn't know what normal was supposed to feel like. Every time her chest rose, I thanked God. Every time it stalled, I held my breath. Elijah didn't speak after that. He just rocked in place, back and forth, his eyes locked on the blinking red light of the device in my hands. He wouldn't touch it, wouldn't go near it, but he watched it like it might start screaming. By sunrise, I'd made up my mind. I wasn't going to let them stay in that house another day. I waited until the house was still, just before the staff started arriving, just before the Holbrooks woke up. I carried Eden in my arms, wrapped in a blanket, down the back stairs of the East Wing. She didn't stir once. Elijah followed close, holding onto my hoodie like a lifeline. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. I unlocked the door to the cottage and helped him inside, laid Eden on my bed, closed the blinds, locked the door. Then I took out my phone and dialed 911. I didn't think. I just said the words. I need an ambulance. There's a girl here. She's not waking up. I think someone drugged her. The dispatcher asked for the address. I gave it. Is she breathing? Yes, but barely. Can you stay on the line? No, I said, and hung up, because I had one more call to make. Mom answered on the second ring. Ava. Her voice was thick, groggy. I need you to come now. What's wrong? I told her everything. Not everything, but enough. The needle mark, the remote, the twins, the drawing, the way Eden just disappeared in the middle of the night, then showed up limp like a rag doll. I told her they weren't safe, and I told her I was done pretending they were. Baby, she whispered, you need to get out of there before. I'm not leaving them. There was a long pause. Then, I'm on my way. The ambulance showed up 12 minutes later. Not quietly. The wail of the siren shattered the still morning air, cutting through the iron gates, rattling the staff, waking up the entire house. 2 paramedics rushed into the cottage. I stepped back and let them take her. One of them asked me what happened. I looked him in the eye. She was drugged, I said, and it wasn't the first time. By the time Mr. Holbrook stormed down to the cottage, the police had already arrived. He looked like a man caught in the middle of a nightmare he couldn't explain, hair wild, shirt halfway buttoned, fury barely disguised as concern. What the hell is going on? I stood between him and Elijah, my body blocking the door. Eden's on her way to the hospital. I said, you had no right. I had every right, I snapped. He took a step forward. This is my house. Then why do your kids keep trying to escape it? That stopped him cold. The cops were already behind him. One of them asked for his name. The other asked mine. I gave it. Clear. Loud. Ava Carter. I'm the daughter of Carmen Carter, the house manager. The kids came to me. Not you. Not your wife. Me. Elijah was curled in the corner behind me, clutching his dinosaur again. Silent. Still. But awake. The officer beside me looked at the remote on the table. What's that? I handed it to him. And that was when everything changed. The next 12 hours blurred. Eden was taken to Grady Memorial. Elijah went with my mom and a social worker who showed up not long after the police did. I answered every question I could without breaking down. I gave them the drawings. I showed them the needle mark. I showed them the damn label on the remote. I even showed them the camera mounted in the corner of the East Wing hallway, the one that no one had told me was there. But I'd noticed blinking red once when I'd passed by. They seized the footage. They took the remotes. They asked for names. And I gave them one. Dr. Victor Reeve, the twins' behavioral specialist. RVT, Reeve, Victor, therapy. The man who came at night. The man Eden followed without crying. Because she was used to it. The same man I now remembered seeing once, tall, bald, sunglasses indoors, carrying a silver case like something from a movie. I'd thought he was just a delivery guy. Turns out he'd been coming twice a week, after dark, with no paperwork, no license, and no oversight. By 6:45 p.m., news vans were camped outside the Holbrook gates. The official story hadn't broken yet, but the pieces were moving fast. Someone had leaked the 911 call. Another had caught video of the ambulance. Staff were whispering. Neighbors were guessing. And the Holbrooks had disappeared into their estate and refused to come out. But I stayed at the hospital. Eden woke up around 7:10. I was sitting outside her room with a social worker when the nurse stepped out and said softly, "She's asking for the girl in the hoodie." I walked in. She looked pale. Her cheeks hollow. Her eyes heavy. But she was alive. And when she saw me, she smiled. Just barely. Just enough. "Can I tell you something?" she whispered. I nodded. She looked at the nurse, who gave a quiet nod and stepped out. Then Eden reached under her blanket and pulled out another drawing. This one was clearer. No red figure. Just a closet. And a camera. Pointing in. "I heard him tell Daddy," she whispered. "He said no one would believe us. That we're broken." I sat beside her and took her hand. "You're not broken." She looked at me, eyes big and glassy. "You're the only one who didn't think so." I didn't cry until I left the room. That night, the police raided the Holbrook house. They found more remotes, more vials, a hidden room in the basement with locks on the outside, a private therapist's office with no records, no diplomas, just documents with Reeves' name and lists of episodes that read more like shock treatment logs than anything medical. It all came out. Every ugly, hidden, unbelievable detail. Elijah and Eden weren't the problem. They were the evidence. And no one had bothered to look until a teenage girl from the laundry room did. It's been 4 days. The Holbrooks have been arrested on charges ranging from child endangerment to unlawful medical experimentation. Dr. Victor Reeve is cooperating with authorities, whatever that means. I don't care. I hope he rots. Eden's staying with a temporary foster family. So is Elijah. But I see them every day. We paint now. Eden draws faces. Elijah draws skies. Sometimes he hums. Sometimes they talk. Not often, but more than they ever did in that house. Mom and I moved out of the cottage the next morning. The Holbrook estate was roped off by police tape. The gates will probably rust shut before it's ever lived in again. And me? I'm starting senior year next week. Still painting in the garage. Still waking up at 3 a.m. sometimes, wondering if I dreamed it all. But then I look at the picture Eden drew for me yesterday. It's of me, holding both their hands. And in the corner, for the first time, she signed her name. Eden. And I know it was real. And I know what people will say. That no one handled the Millionaire's autistic twins. Until the Black Maid's daughter did the impossible. But to me, it wasn't impossible. It was just listening. The morning after the arrests, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Texts from classmates I hadn't spoken to in months. DMs from people I didn't even recognize. News alerts. Journalists. Messages that started with "Is it true?" and ended with "Can I ask you something?" Somehow, I'd become the center of a story that still didn't feel real. Mom turned off my phone before noon. "We're not talking to anyone," she said, her voice low and steady. "Not until the truth is safe." I didn't argue, because I wasn't ready to talk yet either. The truth was still unraveling. Each day brought something new, a file uncovered, a phone record pulled, a whisper from someone who'd worked at the estate years ago and had seen just enough to be haunted. We learned Reeve had been practicing without a license for almost a decade. He'd slipped under the radar using shell companies and private referrals, only working with families rich enough to bury what he did. Eden and Elijah weren't his first patients, just the youngest. The devices? Custom-made, designed to interrupt neural patterns through low-level shock auditory distress. But let's not sugarcoat it. They were torture tools. Weiss, the Holbrooks had signed off on it all, paid for it, demanded it, because, according to leaked emails, the twins can't be civilized unless we break them first. I read that line over and over, and then I threw up in the bathroom. Eden was discharged on Wednesday. The social worker, Tamara, called me as soon as the papers were signed. She asked for you again, she said. I was already grabbing my keys. The foster home was in Decatur. A small, one-story brick house with wind chimes on the porch and a dog that barked every time a car drove past. Eden met me at the door, wearing a pink hoodie 3 sizes too big and socks with tiny sunflowers on them. She didn't smile, but she didn't look away, either. I held out my hand. She took it. Tamara sat us at the kitchen table, passed around juice boxes like we were in kindergarten, and said gently, "There's something you both should hear." She pulled out her phone and played a voicemail. It was Elijah. "Tell Ava I made the blue sky like she said. And Eden can come over when she wants. I have dinosaur stickers." I laughed through a sob. Eden blinked hard and whispered, "He did the sky?" "He did." She didn't say anything else. But when Tamara turned away to answer a call, Eden leaned in close. "He never hit Elijah," she said, so quiet I almost missed it. "What?" "Reeve. He only used the remote. But he hit me when I asked questions." I wanted to scream. Instead, I nodded. "Thank you for telling me." She bit her lip. "Will he come back?" "No," I said, as sure as I've ever been about anything. "He won't." Because even if the system failed, even if some lawyer got him off, there were people watching now. Eyes that weren't blind anymore. And I was one of them. Thursday, I met with a lawyer. Tamara set it up. Her name was Monique Hayes, and she wore bright red glasses and sneakers that squeaked on the polished floor. She sat me down, offered a peppermint, and said, "You're brave. But we're not here to praise you. We're here to protect you." She explained things I hadn't thought about: defamation lawsuits, media contracts, subpoenas. Things I hadn't earned, didn't want, but suddenly had to face. "They'll try to make you look like a liar," she said bluntly, "or unstable, or both." "Why?" I asked. "Because money doesn't fight fair. And these people, they don't lose without trying to burn the whole house down." I swallowed hard. "What do I do?" "You keep telling the truth. One piece at a time." By Friday, the story had gone national. "Twins tortured in Billionaire's mansion." One headline read, "Teen hero exposes underground behavioral abuse ring," said another. They used photos of me I didn't recognize, screenshots from social media, a blurry picture of me painting in the garage that someone must have taken without asking. Eden and Elijah's names weren't mentioned. That was intentional. Protective orders. Sealed documents. But I knew it wouldn't last forever. Someone would slip. Someone always does. So I wrote a letter. Not to the press. To them. To Eden and Elijah. I printed 2 copies, folded them into painted envelopes, and dropped them off with Tamara. I didn't know if they'd read them right away. Or ever. But I needed them to have the words. "You are not broken. You are not strange. You are not burdens. You are kids. And you are loved. Not just by me. By everyone who finally sees you now. Keep painting. Keep humming. Keep asking questions. You didn't deserve what happened. But you deserve everything good that's coming next. Ava." The next day, I got a reply. It came in the form of a sketch. 2 kids, holding hands. And behind them, a girl in a hoodie with a paintbrush like a sword. Above her, the words, "Ava saved us." I cried for hours. But here's what I didn't know then. The story wasn't over. Because while the Holbrooks sat in holding cells and Dr. Reeve faced mounting charges, a new name surfaced in the investigation. A funder. A woman tied to multiple therapy centers across the Southeast. Someone bigger. Older. Smarter. The woman who created Reeve's program in the first place. And guess who she used to work for? The Holbrook Foundation, where she'd overseen alternative research for children with behavioral disorders. Her name hadn't hit the news yet, but Monique showed it to me on paper. And when I read it, my stomach dropped, because I'd seen that name before, on a clipboard, in the laundry room, on my first day at the estate. And suddenly, I knew we'd only knocked over the first domino. The rest was still falling. It was one thing to take down a monster. It was another to realize the monster had friends. The woman's name was Dr. Lorna Kessler, 62, former clinical psychologist, current founder and CEO of a private research firm called EvolvePath. Her title on paper was consultant. Her job, unofficially, was making problems disappear. She hadn't worked at the Holbrook estate directly, But she'd designed Reeves' original behavioral protocol. And worse, she'd signed the patent on the RVT remote. Reeve hadn't built it. She had. Why wasn't she arrested with the others? I asked Monique, as we sat in a little law office downtown, surrounded by folders and legal pads. She's protected, Monique said, tapping her pen against the table. Technically, she hasn't committed a crime that can stick yet. What about the remote? She sold the patent. She can say she didn't control how it was used. But she knew. Monique looked at me, glasses slipping down her nose. Yes, and so did others. I leaned forward. Others. Monique pulled out a folder and slid it toward me. Inside were copies of emails, real ones, leaked by someone anonymous. Pages and pages of them. One line jumped out. We've cleared the Holbrook twins for stage 2. The subject pool looks promising. Confirm LK is on board with the revised suppression protocols. Stage 2. I asked. We don't know yet, she said. But I've got a PI on it. We'll find out. I stared at the name at the bottom of the message thread. Langston Holbrook. That night, I couldn't sleep. I pulled out my sketchbook, but the pages felt too empty. I tried watching a movie, but the noise grated on me. I thought about texting Eden, but stopped. I didn't want her to see how scared I was. At 3:03 a.m., I heard a soft ping. A message. From a blocked number. You shouldn't have gone looking. That was all. No name. No sender. Just black text on a white screen. I showed it to Monique the next morning. Did you open any attachments? No. Just the message. She nodded. Change your number. Get a VPN. And no more unsupervised digging. If they know you're connecting dots. They already know. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. Saturday afternoon, I visited Elijah. He was still with the same foster family. They'd bought him new shoes, red ones with Velcro straps and little stars that lit up when he walked. He didn't say much, but he drew while I sat next to him. This time, it wasn't a house or a monster or the sky. It was a building, long windowless, with a name on the front, Evolve Path, Atlanta Division. He handed it to me, then tapped the lower left corner. There, in tiny stick figures, were 4 kids. One of them looked like Eden. You saw this? I asked. He shook his head. Then he whispered. He showed me. Who? He looked at me. Reeve. We'd all assumed the Holbrooks were the ones calling the shots, but now I wasn't so sure. Reeve wasn't some rogue operator. He was a courier, a foot soldier. The question wasn't just what happened to the twins. It was why. I took the drawing to Monique. She stared at it for a long time, then pulled out her laptop. There's no public Evolve Path office in Atlanta, she said. But if it's real. She began typing. After a minute, she turned the screen toward me. An address on the outskirts of the city. Industrial zone. Registered under a shell company called Varden Integrated Technologies. Sound familiar? She asked. I frowned. Should it? She pointed to the ownership records. The Holbrook Foundation had donated $4.3 million to Varden in 2022. My heart pounded. What do we do? Monique was already standing up. We go. Sunday morning, she picked me up in her old Subaru. We didn't tell anyone where we were going, not the police, not Tamara, not even my mom. It wasn't safe. Not yet. The drive took 4 to 5 minutes. Past warehouses and loading docks, through streets that smelled like oil and quiet. We pulled up to a gray concrete building with no signs, no windows. Just a keypad on the door and 2 black SUVs in the lot. There was a camera above the door. It blinked. They know we're here, Monique said calmly. She handed me a small recording device. Clip it to your jacket. What are we doing? Knocking. She walked to the door, pressed the buzzer, and smiled at the camera like she was delivering cupcakes instead of kicking a beehive. Nothing. Then, click, the door opened. A woman in scrubs stood behind it. Young, polite, masked. Can I help you? Yes, Monique said brightly. I'm here to tour your behavioral research facility. We're considering placing a few high-profile clients. The woman hesitated. You're not on the list. Monique leaned in. That's exactly why we came. Another pause. Then the woman nodded. 5 minutes. We were led down a sterile white hallway. Everything about it felt wrong. Too clean. Too quiet. We passed 3 doors, each locked. No windows. Then a set of double doors with a keypad. The woman didn't open them. "This is where we stop," she said. "What's behind there?" I asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she looked at Monique and said softly, "You should go." "What's your name?" I asked her. She looked me in the eye. And for the first time, I saw it. Faye. But not the kind that keeps you silent. The kind that's ready to break. "Allison," she whispered. Then, so faintly I could barely hear it, "There's still hay." Monique got us out fast. Back in the car, she didn't speak for a long time. Then she said, "We're calling the feds. FBI. Yay. And CPS. And every agency that owes me a favor." I stared at the building behind us as it shrank in the rearview mirror. And I knew this was bigger than Eden and Elijah. There were more kids. Still inside. Still waiting. Still screaming. And no one had listened. Not until now. We didn't sleep that night. Monique stayed on her phone for hours, pacing my living room, switching between burner numbers and encrypted apps I didn't know existed. Every so often she muttered something like, "They moved the kids once already," or "We need a federal warrant or this all goes up in smoke." I sat on the couch, knees hugged to my chest, scrolling through the drawings Elijah had given me over the past few weeks, looking for patterns. 4 places. 4 faces. I found one I hadn't noticed before. 3 stick figures. 1 tall, 1 small, 1 in a wheelchair. The tall one had something in her hand. A clipboard. Next to her was scrawled, A.L. Allison, the girl in scrubs. Elijah hadn't drawn her by accident. He remembered her, trusted her, which meant she'd been there longer than she let on. And she'd seen everything. At 2:17 a.m., Monique's phone buzzed. She put it on speaker. The voice on the other end was sharp, tired, and male. "This is Agent Miles, FBI Behavioral Crimes Unit. We're opening an investigation into Evolve Path. I'm reading your file now, Ms. Hayes." "Good," Monique said, "because we don't have time." "Do we have a whistleblower?" "Not yet." "Then we don't have cause to enter that building." That's when I spoke up. "What if I get one?" Silence. Then, "Who is that?" "She's the reason you're on the phone, Agent Miles. Get the girl in scrubs," I said. "She knows where they are. She wants to talk. She's just scared." I had no idea how to find Allison. I didn't know her last name, her number, or where she lived. All I had was a guess, and the memory of the small tattoo I'd seen just above her wrist when she handed Monique a visitor's badge. A line of text. Luke 12 verse 2. I Googled it. "For there is nothing covered that shall not be revealed, neither hid that shall not be known." A Bible verse. I sat back and stared at my wall for a long time. Then I thought about Eden's old drawings. And one came to mind. A cross. Not a grave. Not a church. A sign. She'd drawn it above a building that looked like a community center. There was a real one a few miles from Evolve Path's facility. Trinity Outreach. The kind of place that ran food banks and taught GED classes at night. I had a hunch. So at 6 a.m., I drove there. She was outside, loading boxes into a trunk. Allison. No scrubs. Just jeans and a hoodie. Her hair pulled back, face pale. She saw me. Froze. Then sighed. "I figured you'd come." "I need your help," I said. She looked around. "You shouldn't be here." "I'm not here for me." She hesitated. "Are they still in there?" I asked. A long pause. Then 3 of them. "Kids." She nodded. "One's nonverbal. One screams in his sleep. The other barely moves." "Are they safe?" Allison's eyes filled. "No." We sat inside Trinity Outreach, behind a locked office door, while I hit record. Allison spoke softly, carefully, but she didn't hold back. "I was recruited right out of my master's program. They said it was private care, specialized therapy for high-needs cases. I didn't know what it really was until a week in. The kids were taken from families who'd signed NDAs. Some had legal guardians who sold them into the program. Others were placed by courts. The twins were the youngest. They tested different things. Sensory denial, audio punishment, shock response. They called it pattern interruption therapy, but it was cruelty. Reeve followed orders. So did the Holbrooks. But none of this started with them. It started with Kessler. Allison leaned forward, hands shaking. She's still running it. And if you don't stop her now, she'll vanish. I stopped recording. Will you tell that to the FBI? She looked at me, then nodded. The next 48 hours moved like a storm. The FBI set up a sting. Allison wore a wire. She went back to the building, met with one of Kessler's assistants, and got confirmation on tape that there were children being housed off the grid. That was the phrase they used. Off the grid. I wanted to burn the whole building down. Instead, I waited. Then, at 4:08 p.m. on a Monday afternoon, the feds moved in. They stormed the compound with warrants and backup. They found 3 kids, 2 in locked rooms with no windows, 1 strapped to a bed, all sedated, all underweight, all nonverbal. They found files, dozens of them, tracking behavioral correction milestones. And they found Dr. Lorna Kessler trying to delete her hard drive. She didn't get far. She was arrested on sight. The media explosion that followed made the Holbrook case look small. Underground child behavior lab busted in Georgia. Private elite program used children as test subjects, whistleblower says. Teen at center of Holbrook case helps crack wider abuse ring. They tried to interview me. I said nothing, because this wasn't about being a hero. It was about getting them out. And we had. Eden drew a new picture. 3 kids, holding hands. No monsters, no cages, no red figures, just the sun in the sky. She handed it to me and whispered, "Allison's a hero too." I nodded. Yeah, she is. Tamara walked into the room then, holding a folder in her hands. She looked at me, smiled slowly, and said, "There's been a change." A week later, I stood in court beside Mom. Elijah and Eden were there too, sitting beside Tamara. We listened as a judge granted me temporary guardianship, pending my 18th birthday in 4 months. Not full custody, not adoption, but enough. Enough to bring them home. Back to the little garage with the paint on the floor. Back to music on Sundays and stars on the ceiling. Back to me. It wasn't impossible. It was love. And it was just the beginning. Because now they were safe. Now they were free. And now the world knew what happened when you underestimate a black maid's daughter. They moved in on a Thursday. 2 twin beds squeezed into my small bedroom. An air mattress for me on the floor. Crayons in coffee mugs. Pillows everywhere. It was chaos. And it was perfect. Elijah carried in his dinosaur stickers first. He stuck one on the wall above his bed before he even took off his shoes. Eden followed with a plastic storage tub full of drawings, some wrinkled, some carefully rolled up like scrolls. I offered to hang one. "No," she said quietly. "We'll do it together later." That word, together, meant everything. Mom stood in the doorway, eyes shiny. She tried not to cry. She always tried. "I bought extra waffles," she said. "The good kind. With blueberries." Elijah lit up. Eden whispered, "Thank you." It was the first time she said it to someone besides me. That night, we played music. Motown, of course. It started with Ain't No Mountain High Enough. Then My Girl. Then I heard it through the grapevine. We didn't dance exactly. We swayed, laughed, stomped around the living room barefoot. Elijah flapped his hands in rhythm. Eden tapped a wooden spoon on the coffee table until she giggled so hard she couldn't breathe. It was the first time I saw them laugh like they meant it. And then, out of nowhere, Elijah said, "I want to paint stars like Ava." I stopped mid-spin. Eden's face changed. "Not fair. Hope. I can do that," I said. We stayed up past midnight, painting constellations on the ceiling with glow-in-the-dark acrylics. Tiny dots that didn't make sense unless you knew the map. Elijah said, "That one's mine." Eden pointed to another. "That one's Ava's." And without a word, they each painted one for Mom. But peace doesn't last forever, especially when the world still wants answers. The next morning, we had visitors. A woman in a gray suit and soft eyes, Rachel Nguyen, CPS investigator turned family advocate, sat on our couch with a clipboard and a folder full of reports. She looked at me like I wasn't 17. Like I was more. She laid it out plain. "You're being offered something rare. Custody can become permanent after your birthday. But the state is willing to sign over legal guardianship now if you accept responsibility." "I already did," I said. "I mean legally." I looked over at the twins, curled on the floor with a puzzle between them. They are not leaving this house, I said. Ever. Rachel smiled. Good. Because I wasn't going to let them either. That night, Eden had a nightmare. She screamed. Loud. Broken. From a place too deep for words. I ran to her room and found her on the floor, gasping, curled into herself. Elijah was there too, holding her hand, rocking her like she used to rock him. I knelt beside them, held her until she stopped shaking. I saw the white room again, she whispered. I knew what she meant. The room with no windows. The one in her drawings. They can't put me back. They won't. Even if they get out. I hesitated, because that was the truth no one wanted to say out loud. What if the Holbrooks didn't stay locked up? What if Kessler got her sentence reduced? What if Reeve took a deal? These people had power, money, connections, and that kind of darkness doesn't always stay buried. So I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I reached out. Monique answered on the first ring. Can they come for them? I asked. Later, when no one's watching. She was quiet for a moment. Then, legally, they shouldn't. But legally and real life aren't the same thing. So what do? We make it impossible for them to hide again. The next morning, I sat with Monique in a quiet conference room at Channel 6 News. I told the story. All of it. On camera. I didn't name Eden or Elijah. I protected their faces. But I told the truth. About the silence. The remotes. The kids in locked rooms. And the girl who wasn't a therapist or teacher or a hero. Just a kid who listened. The segment aired on Sunday. Prime time. It went viral before the credits rolled. #Believe the Twins started trending within hours. People shared drawings. Art. Donations poured in for trauma therapy programs. Volunteers signed up to foster. 3 more kids were rescued from another Evolve Path satellite site in Alabama the next day. Eden watched the video on my phone. Not during the first airing, but later, after dinner, on the couch, with her fingers clenched tight around mine. When it ended, she said, You told the parts one was afraid to say. You're allowed to be afraid. She shook her head. But I'm not anymore. I asked Elijah what he thought. He just pointed at the ceiling. The stars we painted. I feel like that now, he said. Bright. No. Up there. I looked at him. You mean free? He nodded. It's been 3 weeks. Monique's building a case to push for broader reforms. CPS is reopening closed files. Tamara is helping train new foster families who specialize in nonverbal care. Allison, she's working with the FBI now, testifying next month. As for me, I'm finishing my last semester of high school. Eden paints next to me while I study. Elijah sits on the floor with books about planets and meteors and the ocean. And every once in a while, he looks up and says something that stops my heart in the best way. Like yesterday, when he said, I think I could be a teacher someday. And Eden whispered, Me too. Not artist, not astronaut, not survivor, teacher, like they believe in the future. And all I could do was nod and say, Yeah, you could. Because they are not broken. They never were. And now the whole world knows it. There's a feeling you get when your life finally slows down enough to let you breathe. It's not peace, not really. Peace is quiet. This is something else, more like stillness after a storm. The air still smells like lightning, but the thunder's gone. For now, that's what our house felt like. The quiet between questions. We got a letter in the mail from the school district. A big manila envelope addressed to me. Inside, 3 forms. 1 to enroll Elijah, 1 for Eden, and 1 for me, to withdraw. I stared at that last one for a long time. Mom watched me from the kitchen doorway. She didn't say anything at first. Then, finally, You don't have to stop everything. I looked up. Don't I? They are not holding you back, Ava. They are part of your life now. Not all of it. I wanted to believe her. But the truth was, I couldn't imagine sitting in a classroom while Eden had nightmares or Elijah shut down in the middle of the day and needed someone who knew. So I made a decision. I kept their forms. And I left mine blank. The school sent a counselor to visit. Ms. Trent, mid-30s, sharp eyes, kind voice. She spoke to all 3 of us together. Are you ready to be around other kids? She asked Elijah and Eden gently. Elijah looked at Eden. Eden looked at me. No rush, Ms. Trent said. We could start small. A few hours a week. Or a home instructor. You get to choose. It was the first time anyone had said that to them. You get to choose. Eden whispered, I want to try. Elijah nodded. Only if there are books. Ms. Trent smiled. There will be. That weekend, I took them to Target. It felt stupidly normal. A cart full of notebooks, pencils, stickers. Eden picked a backpack with cartoon stars. Elijah picked one shaped like a dinosaur, of course. I bought a $3 whiteboard and wrote a message on it the second we got home. Welcome to school. They stood in front of it for a long time, like it was magic. But the stillness didn't last. Because 2 days later, I got a message I hadn't expected. From Monique. Need to talk. Tonight. Urgent. We met at her office after dark. The parking lot was empty, the windows glowing gold from her desk lamp. She didn't offer coffee. Didn't sit down. She handed me a folder. This came from someone inside the Justice Department. I opened it. Inside was scans of a letter, handwritten, shaky, notarized. It was from another child, from a different facility, describing everything. Same remote, same protocol, same people. The letter was dated 3 years ago. I looked at Monique. They knew. She nodded. Someone buried this. I couldn't breathe. For 3 years, that letter had sat in a drawer, while kids were being sedated, while Eden and Elijah lived in fear, while I was painting stars in a garage, not knowing the sky was falling around someone else. How many more? I asked. We don't know, Monique said, but the trail's wider than we thought. Alabama, South Carolina, Tennessee. I felt sick. Does this change the case? It changes everything. We brought it to Agent Miles the next day. He looked tired, like the weight of it was finally settling on his shoulders. We always assumed the Holbrook case was isolated, he said. Monique shook her head. It was a blueprint. He looked at me. You ready to testify again? I didn't even pause. Yes. The trial against Dr. Lorna Kessler was set for early spring. But she wasn't the only one facing charges anymore. The Holbrooks, Reeve, several former board members of the Holbrook Foundation, and 2 federal employees who'd signed off on alternative care waivers years ago, documents that let the whole thing happen under the radar. The government wanted to settle. We said no, because settling meant silence. And we'd had enough of that. A month before the trial, Eden asked me a question. We were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset behind the old magnolia tree. She had her sketchpad in her lap, pencil tapping lightly against her thumb. Can I tell my story too? I looked at her. You don't have to. I want to. Are you sure? She nodded. Then, for the first time, she flipped the pad toward me. She'd drawn a courtroom. A big table. 3 figures sitting at it, 2 adults, 1 teenager, facing a crowd. Above the table, on a banner, was one word written in crayon. Truth. That night, I wrote my own speech. Simple. Honest. And when I finished, I left space at the end. Because the truth wasn't mine alone anymore. It belonged to all of us. To the kids still inside. To the ones who never got out. And to the ones who, somehow, had found their voices again. Eden. Elijah. Me. We weren't just the evidence now. We were the witnesses. And the storm wasn't over. But we weren't running anymore. The courthouse steps felt taller than they should have been. Not physically. Just heavy. Like every inch was asking, are you sure you're ready? Are you sure you want to remember all of it? But we climbed them anyway. Me, Eden, Elijah, and Mom, holding my hand so tight I couldn't feel my fingers. Inside, it was colder than I expected. Polished floors, white walls, everything too clean, too quiet, like a place where truth had to whisper just to survive. We were early. Monique met us outside the hearing room. She was dressed in all black, except for her red glasses. Her version of war paint. She knelt to meet Eden and Elijah's eyes. You don't have to go in unless you want to, she said softly. We can keep you out of sight. Private testimony. We've got options. Eden looked at her, then at me, then shook her head. I want them to see me, she said. Elijah nodded once. Me too. The trial had started weeks earlier. Without us, it was a federal case, sprawling across multiple states. We were only one part. But we were the part no one could look away from. The judge had already seen the evidence, the videos, the devices, the paperwork, the contracts signed by the Holbrooks, the shredded patient records. Now, it was our turn. The human part. The part that couldn't be measured with a spreadsheet. The part that bled. I took the stand first. The courtroom wasn't packed, but the energy in it was dense. Like everyone in that room was leaning in, waiting to see if I'd flinch. I didn't. I told the story the way it happened. I told them about the night Elijah banged his head on the marble floor. About Eden standing outside the cottage at 3 a.m., holding that broken keychain like it could keep her safe. I told them about the pictures, the remotes, the quiet. I said they weren't unreachable. They were unheard. I said no one listened until they were too broken to scream. And then I said the thing I hadn't planned to say. I'm not their blood. I wasn't trained. I'm not even an adult yet. But they chose me. Because I saw them. And because no one else did. If that doesn't scare you, it should. The courtroom went silent. Even Kessler didn't blink. I stepped down. My knees almost gave out. But Eden was waiting with her hand out. Steady. Unshaking. She took the stand next. Eden didn't use notes. She didn't stammer. She didn't cry. She just told the truth. In her own words. About the white rooms. About the lights. About the time she was 7 and told Reeve she missed her mom, and he locked her in a closet for 3 hours to reset her attachment. She said, they said I wasn't normal. But I was never wrong. Just different. She pulled a folded drawing from her pocket and handed it to the court clerk. It was entered as Exhibit G. The judge asked if she drew it herself. She said, yes, I draw what I remember, so I don't forget what's real. And that's when Reeve, sitting 3 rows behind the defense table, looked away for the first time. Coward. Elijah didn't testify. Not out loud. But he sent a letter. With a picture. A sun. 3 stars. And the words, I have friends now. I want them to never go in the white room. The judge read it into the record. The courtroom stayed quiet. Not because they didn't care. Because they did. And there weren't any words big enough for that kind of pain. After we testified, we stepped outside. The sun hit hard. Like the world didn't know what we'd just said. Mom hugged all 3 of us. Eden didn't pull away. Is it over? Elijah asked. I looked at Monique. No, she said. But it's happening. And that means something. The verdict wouldn't come for weeks. But the damage was done. Kessler's empire was gone. Every Evolve Path facility was shut down. Civil suits were already stacking up. The Holbrook Foundation's assets were frozen. Langston and Genevieve Holbrook would never walk free again. Reeve took a plea. 10 years, no parole. Coward's way out. But at least he wouldn't touch another child. Eden and Elijah came home with me that night. No press. No camera crews. Just us. We sat on the porch, the sky soft and blue, the stars just starting to show. I want to write a book, Eden said suddenly. I looked at her. Yay. She nodded. Not about what happened. About what we do after. Elijah grinned. I'll draw the pictures. I smiled. I'll edit it. Eden laughed. No, you can be the main character. Too late, I said. You already are. Later, after they went to bed, Mom and I sat in the kitchen. She poured tea for both of us. We didn't say much. Just Saturday. Still. Then she reached across the table and said, You changed their lives. I shook my head. They changed mine. I used to think the story ended the night Eden showed up on my doorstep, or the day I called 911, or the moment I took the stand. But it doesn't end there. Because this story doesn't end at all. It continues. In every home that becomes safer. In every child who finds their voice. In every grown-up who finally listens. It continues with us. With me. With the girl who used to sit in the laundry room, folding towels, thinking the world had already decided who she was. Turns out, it hadn't. Turns out, I was just getting started. Spring came like it was apologizing. Warm sun. Green pushing through the dirt. Kids playing on sidewalks again. The world moved on. But we hadn't. We were still healing. Still building. Still figuring out what life looked like after survival. Eden started writing her book. At first, it was just loose ideas in a notebook, paragraphs that trailed off, words scratched out, drawings tucked between pages. She didn't ask for help, and I didn't offer unless she did. One day, she handed me a single page and said, "You can read this one." It said, "I don't want to write about the bad parts. I want to write about how we made a new world, one where no one gets locked in closets for asking questions." I sat there for a long time, just holding that page. "I think the world needs that book," I told her. She smiled. "So do I." Elijah became obsessed with weather. Cloud types, wind speeds, tornado patterns. He checked forecasts every morning and told me if we needed umbrellas or not. He was usually right. He built a tiny weather station on our porch out of string, cups, and a thermometer Mom gave him from the kitchen drawer. "I want to be a meteorologist," he said one afternoon, setting up a plastic barometer from the thrift store. "I don't doubt it," I told him. Then he looked at me, dead serious, and added, "But also a dinosaur." I laughed so hard I dropped my sandwich. People still emailed, called, asked for interviews. I turned most of them down. Not because I didn't care, but because the most important part of the story wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to Eden and Elijah now, and they were writing it one day at a time. Then, in early April, the mail brought something unexpected. An envelope with a Department of Justice seal. Inside, an official letter. And a check. Not hush money. Recognition. A program called the Victim Witness Recovery Fund had reviewed our case and approved a grant for long-term educational support, therapy access, and housing stability. It wasn't millions, but it was enough. Enough to finally move us out of our crumbling rental and into a small yellow house with a fenced backyard and room for 3 bedrooms. When I told Eden and Elijah we were moving, Eden said, "Can we plant a garden?" And Elijah asked, "Can we name the rooms?" So we did. Mine was the rocket room. Eden's, the story tree. Elijah's, cloud base alpha. We moved in the second week of May. On the first night in the new house, Eden sat on the porch swing beside me. The stars were out, and Elijah was inside, taping a paper moon to his ceiling. "You know what I still think about sometimes," she said. "What?" "The old room." "Yay." She nodded, but not like a nightmare anymore. Just like something that happened, not something I live in. I swallowed hard. That's a big difference. It's everything. She looked at me. "You think we'll always be the kids who went through that?" "No," I said. "I think you'll always be more." In June, I graduated. Not in a cap and gown. Not in a gym with folding chairs and awkward speeches. But in our kitchen, with a printed diploma from the online program, a slice of chocolate cake, and 2 kids who stood on their chairs and shouted, "You did it, AVA." It was the best graduation I could have dreamed of. Mom cried the whole time. Eden made me a card that said, "Congratulations to the best big sister who wasn't even born into it." Elijah gave me a drawing of me on top of a mountain with a cape and lightning behind me. He called it Super Ava. I couldn't stop smiling. By July, we were a real family. Not in the legal sense yet. Those papers would take time, but in every way that mattered. We had movie nights, game nights, quiet nights where we just sat and listened to the wind through the screen door. Some days were hard. Some nights Eden still woke up. Sometimes Elijah didn't want to talk at all. But we were okay. We were okay. And that was everything. One morning, Eden handed me a folded letter and said, "You don't have to open this right away." I waited until she left the room. Inside was a single sentence. "You made the monsters go away without becoming one yourself." I sat there and cried, not because I was sad, but because I finally believed it. Then, in mid-August, just as school was about to start, Monique called again. Her voice was different this time. "Big update," she said. "You sitting down?" I was. "There's been a ruling. The judge is authorizing full guardianship. Early." I blinked. "Wait, before I'm 18. "Yes, it's Ray. But given everything, it's done. You're their legal guardian now. Today." I couldn't breathe. "Is it really over?" I whispered. "No," she said gently. "But this part is." That night, I tucked Eden into bed. She looked up at me and said, "Can we call you Mom now?" I smiled. "Only if you want to." She thought for a second, then whispered, "I think I want to call you Ava Mom." And that was it. That was the moment. That was the part one never thought I'd get to have. The good part. The part that felt like healing. Like home. Like finally being safe enough to believe in the future. And when I turned off the light, I whispered into the dark, "We made it." The first day of school came with rain. Not a storm, just steady, soft drizzling. The kind of rain that makes everything smell like wet leaves and pavement. We stood in the kitchen, Eden, Elijah, and me, each of us holding a thermos and waiting for the bus that might or might not come on time. Elijah had drawn a cloud on his lunch bag. Eden had written Chapter 1 on hairs in thick purple marker. I watched them and thought, how did we get here? They were standing at the front door, backpacks on, shoes tied, hair combed. Whole, beautiful, alive, nervous, sure, but ready. They weren't the same kids who screamed behind locked doors. They weren't experiments. They weren't problems to be solved. They were themselves now. The bus pulled up at 7:43. Elijah squeezed my hand before climbing the steps. Eden turned back at the top and whispered, "You'll be here when we get back." I smiled. Always. She nodded once and stepped inside. As the bus pulled away, I waved until it turned the corner. Then I just stood there, in the quiet, in the rain, letting it wash over everything. That afternoon, they came home with stories. Eden had made a friend in reading class. Her name is Melina. She likes wolves. She also has a stutter, but she says it doesn't bother her. Elijah made a chart in science. The teacher said I'm good at patterns. I already knew that, but it's still nice to hear. I heated up mac and cheese and watched them talk over each other at the kitchen table, both of them glowing in their own weird, brilliant ways. This was their real life now. No needles, no screaming, just mac and cheese and stories. That night, while they were brushing their teeth, I sat on my bed and opened the notebook Eden had left on my pillow. The title page was finished. Our book, written by Eden Holbrook. Drawings by Elijah. Rule Life Help by Ava. I turned the page. Chapter 1 was called The First Night Without Screaming. I didn't realize I was crying until the ink blurred. Later, after they were asleep, I stepped outside with a cup of tea. The porch light buzzed gently. The air smelled like new grass. And in the distance, the stars were just starting to peek out from the clouds. One of them blinked. Or maybe it was just me. There's no neat ending to this. No final bow. No curtain drop. Because trauma doesn't wrap itself up in perfect lines. And healing doesn't happen all at once. But this is what I know now. Eden still draws closets sometimes. Elijah still flinches when he hears loud sounds. And I still wake up at 3 a.m. on bad nights, thinking I forgot something, wondering if they're okay. But most days, we laugh. We make pancakes too late in the morning and spill syrup everywhere. We yell over board games and get mad and say sorry and try again. We watch bad movies and fall asleep in a pile on the couch. And when they call me Ava Mom, I still get this ache in my chest that feels like gratitude and grief and love all tangled together. Because we survived. All of us. Not perfectly, but completely. So no, this isn't the end. This is the after. And we get to write it ourselves. Every messy, beautiful, impossible page. Together.